Welcome back to the CFT FitCast. We are back with you today to talk about fasting, dieting, and we're going to touch on a little bit of stuff. If you listened to the very first podcast we ever did, the sound quality was awful. And we didn't have any K-Man coffee. Mine's in here in this fancy
Is it, though?
cup. Yes, it is. Which
Mine's
we'll
right
get
here.
into what is in this cup here shortly and the reasoning behind why I drink it. But let's just kind of kick this thing off. So we want to talk about the three really trendy diets right now. There are three major trendy diets that I get asked questions about fairly regularly, and two of them that I do quite often. So those three are the keto diet, the ketosis diet, the intermittent fasting diet, and carb cycling. So let's start with the basic parameters of all three. Ketosis, the idea is you basically cut out all carbs. You eat a certain amount of vegetable carbs, obviously for fiber purposes. But for the most part, you're down to, I don't know, I'd say maybe 20 carbs a day, 30 carbs tops. So you've completely cut out carbs. The difference is you're eating somewhere about 1.25 to 1.5 to 1 grams of protein to fat. Meaning that if you're eating 150 grams of fat, you're probably eating 150 grams of protein. You're probably eating about 100 grams of fat a day. To give you an idea of 100 grams of fat, that's a lot of fat. You got to get creative to get that much fat into your diet. Or do you? Stay tuned.
Lots of eggs.
Yeah, we'll get back to that part here in a minute as we kind of dive into each particular diet. But right now we're just skimming the top. Intermittent fasting. Something that is popular with the keto diet in conjunction, but also can be used as its own diet. Intermittent fasting basically deals with the idea that you can fast for a certain amount of hours a day, whether that's 12 hours, 16 hours. Some people fast. I will at least twice a week fast for 24 hours. I fasted as long as 36 hours, but for the most part, somewhere between 16 and 20 hours is an average day for me. The idea behind intermittent fasting, you're putting your body into kind of a, not really starvation mode, but you're basically limiting your window to eat. So for those of us that like to eat big meals, but at the same time our schedules really don't allow us to eat often, or binging is a part of the stress and everything else that goes along with your schedule and your daily life. And if you eat out of emotion, intermittent fasting is not a bad idea for you. It's really helped me curb a lot of issues with my diet. I can create the window to eat when my schedule allows. So if I have a 4-hour window to eat, guess what? I'm going to go and buy 2,000 calories worth of food, generally healthy foods, and I'm going to eat within that 4-hour time frame, that entire 2,000 calories worth of food, and then I might not eat again until the next day at around the same time. So definitely excellent for that purpose. And then carb cycling. So carb cycling, great for somebody who's really consistent with their workouts, working out 5-6 days a week, doing a lot of heavy lifting. Best part about it, you get your high days, your medium days, your low days, meaning that on days you don't do anything or even just conditioning, you might not eat much carbs at all and do more of a ketosis style, very minimal carbs. For the most part, it's all going to be veggies, meat, and fats. And then you have your high days where you might not see really any fat, and it's going to be all rice and meat, so to speak. So extremely high protein days, or very medium-ish to lowish protein, very, very, very high carbs, and almost no fat. And then you have your medium days that's kind of a blend, a little bit more fat, a little bit less carbs, and roughly the same amount of protein. So three of the main diets that people are encountering. Carb cycling is something you could kind of tie to something like RP. Very similar to carbs. RP goes into more nutrient timing in terms of eating exactly at the right times based on your workouts and whatnot. But they do cycle your carbs based on your intensity level. So if you're not really lifting weights and it's an off day, you're going to eat a lot less carbs than, say, a day that is a bunch of heavy lifting or a normal training day. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of just a brief description of all three of the diets. So let's start nailing home keto. Matt.
Ketosis?
Keto.
So to kind of give you a little bit of a breakdown of what it is when you say ketosis. We'll call it cellular respiration, the scientific term for those of you handy with the Googles. That's the means in which your body goes to break down all the things that you eat and process it as energy. The cellular respiration can run off one of two things: carbs or fat. And although we eat a lot of both, I know if I go to In-N-Out, I'm getting fries, burger, double. Is that what you guys call it out here? I ain't from around here. Double with a milkshake, and that's nothing but fat and sugar. So your body it doesn't necessarily break them both down the same way. The sugar your body would prefer because, one, it's easier to break down. You have small chain triglycerides, medium, and large. Like fiber is large, sugar is small, to kind of give you an example, a spectrum. So if you're always eating sugar, then your body's always going to take that fat and store it, unless you have a huge cardiovascular or a energy in, energy out ratio. So you're eating a lot, but you're moving a lot too. But people don't seem to follow that regime. They usually eat a lot and don't move enough. So eating high fats and high sugars, your body's always going to break down the carbs or the sugars over the fat and store the fat every time. And your body's even evolved to a point where it can take take carbohydrate and transfer it into a fat and store it. And that's something we've evolved into doing over the past 6,000 to 8,000 years. Whenever we started to find all the fruit trees and everything, and we still ate all the lard and the animal meat as well. But I'm not a paleontologist or anything, so don't quote me on that. I'm just speaking off the top of my head of what I know. But if you're the type of person that can somehow prevent and get away from sugar or excessive amounts of carbohydrates, I know Chris was talking about 30 grams a day. I would maybe argue and say that it's dependent upon your biomarkers, how tall you are, how old you are, how much muscle mass you have, and what's your lean body mass, and those type of biomarkers. I wouldn't say that if you eat over 100 grams of sugar a day and you are an extreme athlete, so you're training for marathons and you're eating 100 grams a day of sugar a day and more fat, I would still say that you're in ketosis because you're not sustaining enough caloric intake as far as sugar goes to use that as a main energy. So you're eating probably 200 grams of fat at that level just so you can get calories, because at that point, if you are training for marathons, it's all about calories. And you can't do anything without fat or carbs. So people like Chris and I who aren't elite athletes, we would probably have to stick with the 50 grams or less. And especially if you maybe work out 2 or 3 times a week, you're going to be on the 30 gram. So that's kind of how that scale works. It's not 30 for everybody or 50 for everybody. It's always dependent upon you and where you stand in your fitness and your goals and health. But ketosis is basically these ketones or these fatty acids. So the way things are broken down in your food, carbohydrates are broken all the way down into glycogen and goes through the liver, and it gets stored into your muscle cells right next to the muscles. Right there, I got a bunch of glycogen right there. And the ketosis it doesn't get stored in your muscle. It's actually stored in body tissue and body fat tissue. So in order for your ketones to make it into the energy process, they have to go through the blood, and they have to get to the blood to get to the muscle, and vice versa, to enable to create this energy, this powerhouse. Whereas sugar is just right there. So your body prefers sugar. However, you can do amazing things if your body's in this ketosis. For one, you're always burning fat. 2, you're able to eat a little bit higher fatty diet, which a lot of people like whenever that comes to meats or adding butter.
Butter, I was going to say butter.
Kerrygold, silver.
All the butter.
Kerrygold, silver.
All the steak, too. So all you guys that are eating all that lean steak because you can't have the high-fat steaks, ribeye, New York T-bones.
Talk to me.
Tomahawk steaks, all that stuff that's super high in fat that most people would get canceled out on, like, say, an RP diet, just because the meat alone has too much fat for your daily intake, for your nutrient timing. That's all back in your diet. I mean, there's days I come off intermittent fasting, and I'll eat a 20-ounce, super fatty steak because my body needs it. It needs the calories, but it also needs the fat, right? So I need to kickstart my diet. My body is eating fat all day long, right? So my body is eating my fat all day long while I'm intermittent fasting. But the problem is it's running out of stores, even though I'm a big guy. It's running out of those immediate stores to drive from. So I need to replenish my body immediately with a high-fat meal. And that sparks my energy again. And I can eat carbs down the line during my eating window, but I want to do that towards the end of my eating window, not right at the beginning. I want to pack that fat into my diet so my body has something to burn for energy.
And I think a lot of people don't take for granted or even think of when it comes to ketosis, because they think, oh yeah, I can eat a whole bunch of fat. They don't realize is you got a lot of food out there has sugar. Like, you would be shocked if you haven't looked already. There's so much sugar in everything. Milk.
A lot of your high fat go-tos, high sugar.
Yeah. Milk has 10 grams of sugar per 8-ounce glass. In case you didn't know, 10 grams of sugar. So what a lot of people don't think about is the psychology of ketosis and what it takes mentally to get going into it. Your first 3 to 6 weeks are the worst, because not only are you changing your diet, but you're changing your chemical makeup in your body and how it works. It would be as if you stopped drinking water and had to find a replacement for water somewhere on this planet. And as far as that option goes, there's not a whole lot of options out there other than getting like coconut water is about your only other option. So having a lot of sugar elsewhere in other places that's so readily available, it's hard to find a full fat diet or to find a full fat meal at like McDonald's, or I know In-N-Out does the protein style, which is cool. I did that for a while. But the psychology of it, sticking to your ketones, making sure you're eating high fats and staying in that ketogenic window. And Mark Bell talks a lot about it, and he does that diet as well, the Jacked and Tan diet. Huge guy, come from the bodybuilding scene. He was so fat. And now he is shredded. But you need to look at his process from a long-term scale. So when it comes to all these diets that we're talking about, these aren't quick 30-day fixes. And this isn't something that's going to make you skinny all of a sudden in a 60-day challenge. These are going to be long-term goals that you have. And the psychology of that is you need to have not only the motivation, but the discipline to stick out a year or 2, 3 years of consistent dieting with whatever it is. If you're hanging out in ketosis, it's not going to happen in 60 days. Yeah, you're going to lose a little weight, but your huge transformation is going to come over that 2-year, 3-year gap of you putting in the hard work and the discipline. And the difference in motivation will be the first to go. It's the discipline that's what's going to hold you in the long game. If you have no discipline, I would not even attempt this ketosis diet, because you will fall off really fast. And that first 3 weeks, how'd you feel mentally?
Oh, it was, I mean, my body's kind of used to eating high fat. I've done a lot of paleo, so it wasn't as bad as somebody saying going from like a really shitty diet or
eating the fast
say,
food
like
stuff
going from like a fast food diet to a keto diet,
the I'm
or
busy diet.
Or going from like straight from an RP diet where you're used to eating a boatload of calories, especially high sugar right after your workout. That's gruesome. That is absolutely mentally torturous. For me, it was torturous more in just like general cravings, which I used intermittent fasting to really beat back. Because I was intermittent fasting, I was able to delay and go, yeah, I could eat that, but I need to make it to this point in time, which at that point in time, the idea it wasn't generally as bad. You know, I got through that craving hit. And then, you know, stuffing my face with like I said, a giant steak generally.
Yeah. I call it the foggy window.
Yeah.
That first 3 weeks of trying to go high fat, that foggy window, your brain feels foggy, your workouts feel foggy, you don't feel like last thing you want to do is work
energy
out.
For your workouts. Do not come in thinking you're going to crush the world. You're going to be feeling like garbage for at least a few weeks.
And it's all because your body's trying to figure out how it's going to survive. And that's all your body knows is survive. Survive and reproduce. It's only 2 goals it has. So when you shift this, you're changing everything chemically, and it takes a little bit of time to adapt to that, but you can and you will adapt. And that's kind of the next thing I want to get into. So what happened after you got into the flow of things with this whole ketosis? And we'll kind of stay away from intermittent fasting. That'll be our next one.
Yeah, so for me, I did ketosis for a while. And what I found was staying in ketosis is easy if you're on it all the time. But this is not a diet you can just up and decide to have a cheat meal, because it's just as simple to eat a really crappy meal and get bumped out of ketosis. And what happens? If your body isn't fully functioning that way, one, you're again gonna throw your body into just complete tailspin.
Havoc.
But two, you're getting back in ketosis could take weeks. It's not just I'll be back tomorrow. No, it may take weeks to get back into ketosis.
Yeah, remember what we said? Your body prefers carbohydrates.
Yep.
Especially your brain. Your brain loves them.
Yeah. Ever since we started planting, ever since we started the farming and agriculture, once agriculture was invented, and our forefathers and our great all the way back ancestors started eating agriculture instead of and a lot of grains, our bodies kind of turned towards carbs. And I got to say, along with it came a lot of disease and issues. So I do think the ketosis diet has its benefits. I think a paleo diet has its benefits. If you're battling a lot of chronic disease, if you're battling a lot of inflammation issues, I think this is a really great way to test and see if maybe just getting off that carb dynamic is what you need to do. Diabetics, I know a lot of diabetics that follow a keto diet, whether they know it or not. And like when they started researching keto, they realized they were doing a keto diet, and it has worked fantastic for them. But yeah, no, you're going to go. I've heard of people getting the keto flu, where they literally have the flu and it feels like their whole body aches and their whole body is sore, because your body is built to burn fat when you're aerobic. So when you're running, when you're doing stuff that's low intensity, you're not really lifting heavy weights, you're not really going hard, you're not sprinting, your body burns fat. Well, at a certain point, you're going to pass that and your body is going to start yearning for carbs.
Compared to the ability to store carbs and store fat, you have way more fat storage for energy. So long workouts, like he's mentioning, with the runs or the light weights, low intensities, all aerobic, that's pretty much mostly stored energy is what you're running off of.
Which is why a lot of diets and a lot of conditioning workouts, like RP will recommend that you do at least X amount of minutes of conditioning, low impact conditioning, walking on a treadmill, riding a bike, rowing, on your off days, because it's just straight fat burn. It's what we call the bodybuilder conditioning. You get on a treadmill, you walk at 3 miles an hour at an incline for 45 minutes to an hour.
That was my go-to back in the day.
And
I was so lazy.
You just burn straight fat, right? And you're on a high-fat day, so your body is just burning through everything you're eating, and that fat is keeping those cravings down. But back to it, the whole idea is you could change your entire dynamic. You could lift weights. You could do everything aerobic and anaerobic while burning fat. Why? Well, for, say, somebody like a games athlete, you're not going to be able to replenish your carb stores in a 4-day period. Once they're gone, you're not going to be able, you can't eat 600 grams of carbs in a day and hope that it gets in your body and replenishes you your energy stores for the next day. But fat, it's a different story. Your body's got it whether you like it or not. And if you're continually eating it, your body can immediately turn that into energy. So if, say, for a games athlete, turning your body into a fat burning machine, aerobic and anaerobic, could be the difference between first and last place. Mm-hmm.
But would you agree that the ketosis is probably one of the hardest of the three?
Oh, it's the hardest.
Just because
of all the diets I've done and had success with, it is the absolute hardest, because it is a daily struggle. It is not something you can just, it's not like paleo where you can just get back on the horse the next day and nothing happened. It is absolutely the hardest diet you will ever do. It has to be a lifestyle change. This is not I'll do this for a couple months and then I'll get on a normal diet, or I'll get on an RP diet. This is something that if you put the time into, this is a lifestyle change. A keto diet is something that you will do at some level forever if you want to see success. Years for true success on that diet.
Cool. So that's ketosis. When we come back, we'll talk about intermittent fasting, which is my favorite.
My favorite too.
And then we'll dive into eating a bunch of carbs after you work out. Post-workout Doritos.
Oh. Post-workout cereal. Frozen yogurt. Oh, those are my go-tos.
Menchie's.
Yep.
I love you. We'll be back.
What's up, everybody? We're back, and we are going to talk. We talk keto. Now we're going to talk intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is probably my favorite so far of any diet I've ever done. Why? Because sometimes I wake up and I don't want to eat in the morning. And sometimes I'm so freaking busy.
Breakfast
I
is the
can't
most
eat.
important meal of the day.
Thanks, Kellogg's. I honestly sometimes won't eat until 7 o'clock at night. Sometimes 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Why? Well, that's horrible for you. You know that, Matt. You can't eat that late. You shouldn't eat after 7 p.m. You didn't know that?
How dare you?
Let's talk the facts on that. Is there a window? Absolutely. We talked about it briefly in the past, about the 12-hour window. If you're intermittent fasting for 12 hours a day, that means you only have a 12-hour window. Guess what? It's pretty hard to screw that up, unless you're staying up for 36 hours straight or something like that. Then, it's a different story. But normal human being, you're sleeping 6 to 8 hours a day. You're intermittent fasting for 12. That means you have somewhere between a 6 and 8 hour window to eat. What does that mean? It's pretty hard to screw that up as long as you're eating the right amount of calories. Am I right or am I right? So, why? It's almost a diet. I hate to say diet for dummies, but it's a diet for people that don't want to follow strict calorie numbers. They don't want to follow a timing diet. For a lot of us, we just don't have time.
Or they have kids.
The number one argument I ever hear about doing some sort of nutrient timing diet, or any diet that requires small meals X amount of times a day, I don't have time for that. Where am I going to get a meal when I'm dropping off child A at ballet and child B at football, and then I have to be back in 48 minutes to pick up child A and then pick up child B an hour after that?
Mm-hmm. Can't find a microwave everywhere.
No. So, intermittent fasting is fantastic for that. Why is it called intermittent? Well, let's easily answer that question. It means you're changing the amount of time you're fasting on a daily basis depending on your schedule, your needs that day, and just your general hunger. I mean, why fast longer than you need to? If you're hungry, eat. Right? But again, you're just going to eat during your window, and at the end of that window, you're done eating. So if you know you're going to be up till midnight and you start your intermittent fasting window at noon, it's probably not a good idea. It's going to be a pretty crappy night. But at the same time, if you know you're going to be up until midnight and you start your intermittent fasting window at 6 p.m., you'd probably be fine with that, So, is the argument don't eat before you go to bed? Sure. But if I just fasted for 36 hours and I want to go to sleep, I'm not going to sleep starving. So I'll eat a big meal and I'll sleep like a baby. Matt, what do you think?
Well, I agree to that. My intermittent fasting is slightly different. So I give my window is it's supposed to be an 11-hour window, but I'm having a hard time maintaining that because I wake up so damn early at 5:30, and I go a 12-hour window from that would be 5:30 in the afternoon. And who does not eat after 5:30 that has a normal job or lifestyle other than this guy, right? But that's my window. So I go on an 11-hour window, and my whole theory is I try to avoid eating before bed. That's my only goal. And I've learned and experienced, as well as others experienced, my clients experienced, that if they can do that, not only do they feel more energetic the next day, but they also recover faster from their workouts. They're not sore as long, and they feel like they have more control over what it is they eat and when they eat it. So I give them the full go-ahead to do their nutrients or their caloric intake, get the calories in no matter how they can get it in, and give them that hourly window of 12 hours, and they have no problem hitting that because they usually wake up around 7. They'll eat something on the way to work, which is around 9. That means they have until 9 p.m. that night to eat some more food. And once that 9 p.m. window hits, they got to stop. And I've learned with working with individuals that is mentally, it's the easiest, and it's a great way to get instant results as far as weight loss or more energy, more productiveness over the next day, because you're able to, you're not eating late at night, whether it's junk food or healthy food. Eating in general, there's two things that your body does at nighttime. It's either breaking down food that you just ate, or it's repairing cells that because you didn't eat, and that's its only other job to do. So if there's food in your belly, you can't repair cells. Your body's going to prioritize breaking down the food and doing something with it. It can't just sit there because it would rot, and that's not how your body works. But if you go to bed and you haven't eaten in 3 or 4 hours, most of that food that you've eaten over the course of your day is mostly done processing and getting out of your stomach and going through the lower half of the GI tract and the small intestine and large intestine, which gives your body the ability to, which is always happening, food in the lower part of your GI tract is always moving, right? Poop. pee. Yeah, always happening. But with the waking up and with an empty stomach and working out and starting your day that way, people will have a lot more energy, and there's not much of a mental game to them as far as their diet and nutrition goes. So they're not cutting out the carbs, or they're not doing, I don't know, name a diet. What's a diet? The Jenny Craig diet. They're not getting stressed out about that. They're still eating normal. They still have a normal window to eat their food in. It's just a much easier and psychologically more effective way to lose weight, feel better, and get into an more active, healthy lifestyle. Now, once you get the hang of that, that's when you can start adding in or doubling up with maybe a ketosis. You can start, now that you've developed your discipline, you know that you can do it. You can add a little bit of difficulty, or even better, you can do some carb cycling, which we'll talk about that in a little bit too. But I think this is the best place to start, is intermittent fasting. My window is 11 hours. His window is a little different. It's a lot shorter. But I have 2 kids. My schedule's crazy. I work early at 5 a.m. and I work as late as 7:30, 8:30 at night. So I'm not perfect with my diet, but intermittent fasting allows me to be consistent. And consistency is more important to me than perfection at my point in life. I'm not an elite athlete. I'm not getting paid to work out. I'm just trying to be healthy, live longer, and be healthier for my kids.
Yeah, and to add to that, he's absolutely right. There are days where, just to kind of give a preface here for people that may not know my schedule, my average day is 18 hours long, average.
Always got to top me.
Working-wise is 12 to 15 hours. So I don't get a lot of free time to eat. So intermittent fasting was the first thing I found that allowed me to control my eating, because it was really easy to just at 10, 11 o'clock at night, as I'm leaving the gym, stop in In-N-Out and order a million cheeseburgers because I'm starving and my eyes are bigger than my stomach. I gained a lot of weight because I didn't really know how to control my diet, and I couldn't stay with an RP style diet. I wasn't working out enough to warrant a lot of carbs. So things got really out of whack, and intermittent fasting has really got me back on track. And people will be like, oh, how can you fast for 24 hours? Why do I fast for 24 hours? One, I love the challenge. I actually really enjoy the challenge of trying to go that long.
It's in your DNA too. It's a normal thing.
I've done 36 hours. That was a little bit more because I did 24, and then next thing you know, it was 11 p.m. and I didn't want to stop in In-N-Out on the way home and feel like garbage in the morning. So I decided I would sleep through it and go for a full 36. So, and I did, and it was awesome, and I felt good. I ate a lot of food the next day, but I woke up feeling really, really good. I was hungry, but physically speaking, my extremities, my shoulders weren't sore, my knees weren't feeling bad, my hips were good. All these things I normally wake up feeling pretty sore from just working out in general weren't feeling all that bad. So my body had a chance to repair itself, like you said. So, just to kind of give an idea, I'll fast sometimes upwards of 16, 18 hours. But you know what else I'll do? I'll take the Keto Pro from Mark Bell. I'll put it in my coffee. I'll blend it in the morning. I might even add some driven caramel latte protein. Yeah, I know I'm name dropping here, but I'm just letting you know how I do it, what I use. To answer those questions that I'm sure will come in person later. And what I have is basically a caramel macchiato every morning. If I know I'm going for a long fast, or if I'm just hungry and I know I'm gonna end up binging or doing something stupid, I get one of those. I blend it all together, and I drink that as my coffee in the morning.
A caramel marquito.
Yeah, it's caramel slingshot.
Boom.
And it's got very minimal calories. It's got plenty of fat. There's only like 4 or 5 grams of sugar in the whole thing. And I get that nice sweet craving. I get that, that craving for something sweet. Mm-hmm. I get my coffee in. I'm still pretty much fasting. My body at this size is still eating plenty of fat. It's not really, it's not stopping my body from eating fat before my next meal. And, today I did 2 of them. Why? 1, I'm hungry. 2, I worked out. I did a lot of cardio today, about 40 minutes straight. So, I could afford a second one and still fast. And I'll still fast till 5 or 6 o'clock, and then I'll eat a full meal. But, it's intermittent fasting is major improvement for a lot of people. Just simply cutting your window down. Mm-hmm. When I do open up my window, I generally don't allow it to be more than 4 hours because I just get crazy. And I know that. Mentally, I just get crazy. And secondly, I generally don't open up my fasting period, my eating period until about 5 or 6 o'clock at night. So anything longer than 4 or 5 hours puts me at 11 midnight, and I don't want to be going to bed on a full stomach. So I keep that window small. I get to eat a big giant meal. It feels great. I can pretty much eat whatever I want, though I try to keep it to mainly meat and veggies and a lot of fat. But I will allow bread, carbs, stuff like that at times when I'm craving them, because it allows me to still get it in, right? Still feel good and get that mental craving out of the way, but at a time when it's not really going to do any damage to me. It's not going to really hurt my weight loss. I'm down 20 pounds in 3 or 4 weeks. Do I think you'll get that same result? Maybe. It really depends on what you're cutting out. If you drink beer or wine every night and you cut that out and do intermittent fasting and go to a clean diet, yeah, you might see some similar results because your body's holding on to a lot of extra water weight and stuff that will just immediately dissipate because you are fasting and cutting out the things that are creating all that water weight. For me, I know that's not necessarily water weight. It's really because I came off a keto diet. It's really more my body's just in a good place, and I'm keeping that calories in versus calories out to a point where I'm constantly in a deficit. But because that window is so short and I'm eating such giant meals, my body is happy, my mind is happy, and I'm not really battling a lot of cravings very often anymore. So yeah, intermittent fasting. Talk about a frown upside down.
Yeah, I decided to go. I didn't even realize I was doing it. We'll say that I meant to do it. I switched from this idea of eating every 3 hours, which I'm sure people out there still do, right? All the bodybuilders. I consider myself one of those guys. Every 3 hours, I was putting food in my mouth, and I was at least putting 25 grams of protein every single time. But when it got to a point where I joined the military, joined the Army, I had kids, and then my life didn't allow me to eat every 3 hours, that's where accidentally intermittent fasting became my hero. What eating every 3 hours did was it made me hungry every 3 hours. Whether or not I was eating or not, I was starving because I've lived on that 3 hour window. Every 3 hours until I went to bed, I would eat something. And for about 2 or 3 years, I did that. And then once my life started changing, my priorities, you could say, I was still hungry every 3 hours, starving. I could eat a big meal, 3 hours later, hungry again. 3 hours later, hungry again. Until it came to a point where it slowly went away. But then once I started to eat 3 big meals every day, whether it was breakfast early in the morning, then small lunch, and then a huge dinner, I was able to still eat the same amount of calories, but it took me a little bit of time to kind of get into that habit because I was eating every 3 hours. But the one thing that I noticed that I learned from it is that I instantly lost at least 4% body fat, dropping from eating every 3 hours, because I wasn't this bodybuilder who ate fish and kale or carrots. I was eating like food, like regular human food, like peanut butter and jelly, ham and cheese with a glass of milk. I wasn't eating the cleanest, but I was definitely eating enough. I was big and I was strong for sure, but I was a little chubby. And for me, that didn't look good. I was actually weighing like 210, and actually I weigh 5 pounds less than right now, and I'm a lot less body fat than I was. So if your schedule doesn't allow, or your kids don't allow to eat every 3 hours, I know a lot of guys still try to do that, and they swear by it, but I promise you, with my experience, I've learned that implementing an accidental intermittent fasting is going to give you better results and also free up your schedule and provide you a little bit less stress throughout your day.
Oh, the stress of eating is gone. Mm-hmm. My stress of eating is don't forget to eat. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's like the only stress I have is it's 6 o'clock. I should probably go get some food. Wait, I coach at 6:30. All right, I'll just eat tomorrow morning.
Another thing that I noticed with intermittent fasting too is that if I haven't been working out that often, everybody here knows they don't see me working out as much, maybe once a week for a solid 4 months here lately, but I haven't seen a huge diminish in gains. Nope. My strength obviously has gone down, and my conditioning isn't where it was, but my aesthetics, my appearance, my looks, I still look quite similar with my shirt off. And I think that's because my body has just gotten used to this fasting. And if I'm not active in my workouts, I'm not hungry. Like throughout my day, like right now I'm waking up and I don't want breakfast at all. I eat such a huge dinner around 6 or 7. I don't want to eat anything for breakfast. All I want is a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. And once I get my cup of coffee, my hunger is gone. At least like right now, I still haven't eaten breakfast. I've been up since 4:50, and it's now 2:45 in the afternoon. Haven't eaten lunch. I've had coffee. I've had some of this. Oh, you know what? I did have. I take that back. I had a bacon, egg, and cheese on a biscuit, but that thing was like that big around, and I feel satiated. I feel full still, and still don't feel like I'm craving lunch. And I haven't worked out, but when on days that I work out, I have an appetite. Like I'll eat breakfast, and then lunch comes around right at 11:30, like clockwork. I'll hear the growl in my stomach, and around 1 o'clock I'll have to eat. And then around dinner time, same thing happens. I'll get hungry again. My body is just, it's adapted. It knows what's up. It knows that there's physical changes, whether it's stress or it's work or it's exercise. Or even studying. And, when you study and you play chess, you're using your brain burns calories. That's work. And that's a metabolic process. So depending upon your days, you might not eat the same amount of calories every day, and that's all dependent upon what you're doing in your activity. If you're working out every single day, though, and have pretty much a regulated lifestyle, then you're not going to notice those things unless your life's as crazy as mine or someone else with kids or a business. And so just kind of playing around with those things and working that intermittent fasting, I've learned that it allows my body to adapt to my day-to-day habits and activities of what I'm doing.
And if I could add to that, like Matt said, I just kind of punctuate what he said. Don't ever put yourself in a planned fast, meaning, oh, I have to fast until this time, because your schedule, life will dictate otherwise. Probably 7 out of every 10 days. Mm-hmm. For me, I could plan to fast for 36 hours, and the next thing you know, I'm eating 18 hours later because I know something changed and I'm going to get busy, and then that thing could turn into 48 hours and I'm going to be a grump, and I can't, there's just certain things that will change stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like I planned a 24-hour fast, and then I got crazy busy, and then it was 11 p.m. at night, and I said, okay, we're going to 36 hours because I'm not eating right now. And I can't just go, oh, I have to because my 24-hour fast is up. That doesn't make any sense, right? Don't plan your day around it. Just know that when you break your fast, have a window. That window, that is the only thing that needs to be planned. When you start your eating, that window needs to be, you need to have an end date to that window, an end time, and that window needs to not run up to bedtime.
Yep.
An hour or two gap between bedtime and the end of your window. So if it's 7 o'clock at night and you're going to bed at 10, you have a 1 hour window. You better get a pretty fat meal if you want, or get something light and, eat in the morning. So, you have options. Mm-hmm. It just really depends on how well you sleep hungry. I can sleep hungry. It's not a big deal.
So when we come back, we'll talk about carb cycling and who that's for, how do you do it, and we'll finish it up on that.
See ya.
Deuces.
And we're back. CFT FitCast. We talked about ketosis. We talked about intermittent fasting. Let's talk carb cycling, and then I want to round this thing out by talking about how you can kind of blend them all. So, I have some experience with carb cycling. I've done a couple different carb cycling diets, and I want to start this off by saying there is not a wrong answer here. It's really more of a schedule / psychological thing for a lot of people.
What's your life like?
Yeah, what's your life like, and what's your mentality like? Are you an athlete that is eating as part of their job? Carb cycling is probably going to be a fantastic option. You're doing a lot of high-intensity working. You do a lot of high-intensity training, a lot of weightlifting, a lot of energy expenditure. Carb cycling can be your best friend. Off days, you go to that high-fat, low-carb diet. Your main training days, you might be on a much higher carb cycling, eating a lot more carbs, a lot lower fat, a lot higher medium-ish protein. But ultimately, the idea is your calories in, calories out are always in a deficit unless you're looking to bulk, trying to get them extra gains. So in that case, your carb cycling might be dictated more on your goal. So Carb cycling for weight loss, you're always going to be in a deficit. However, you're going to be in a slightly larger deficit on your off days because your body needs more calories when you're lifting weights and doing high-intensity work. If you're looking to gain weight, you're probably going to be eating carbs all the time. And on your high days, you're probably going to be eating more carbs than you actually would like to. And that's weird to say, but trust me, there is a limit to the amount of rice one man can eat or pasta or sweet potatoes before you feel like you're going to just explode because your plate is 70% pasta or carbs and 30% protein and 0 fat. Let me tell you how dry sweet potatoes are with no butter, no milk, nothing in it because you can't have it.
Sounds like a California sweet potato.
It sounds like just awful. Sounds like a famine diet.
I put marshmallows and brown sugar on my sweet potatoes. I don't know about y'all.
But again, let's talk about intermittent fasting. You know, Matt, I kind of broke it down, but I mean, what do you think about? What's your take on? Or I'm sorry, not intermittent, carb cycling. What's your take on intermittent carbs?
Well, I followed a little. I didn't get programming from RP Nutrition, but Chris Minton kind of guided me along the way and helped me kind of program my macros. As far as when I was working out 3 hours a day, it was awesome. I had a hard time on low carb days just because we were working out pretty much every single day, hardcore. Even on Thursdays, whenever it was just cardio day, we were running for an hour and a half. And like the first thing I want is Menchie's frozen yogurt after that. And it was really hard to kind of get away from, on my low carb days, to do just that, eat low carbs. Because every day I just love carbs. But it did, however, give me a huge benefit on performance. I noticed whenever I would eat my little bit of carbs and some protein before my workout, a little bit of carbs and protein after my workout, and then early in the day and later in the day, I would add more fat, a little bit less carbs, and still high protein. The hard thing about that, though, like I said, with priorities and your lifestyle, what's your life like, it was hard to hit carbs and protein at certain specific times because with carb cycling is a whole lot of timing restrictions. So you might have things to do, but it doesn't matter. You just got done working out, and there's chemical requirements that your body needs, and that's carbs and protein, especially on a high carb cycle or on a carb cycling diet. And with my schedule, I found that difficult to do whenever I wasn't training as often as I was, because with training as often as an elite athlete does, or someone who's like Chris Minton's trying to get to regionals, or that works out 3 hours a day, there's huge caloric demands, and you have to be able to meet those caloric demands, or else your performance is going to suffer because of it. But once I stopped training 3 hours a day and as often, I started to find it difficult to consume all that food and all those carbs on the same caloric intake. So, and on that same schedule, because I was working out in the morning, and then the next day I'd work out at night, and then the next day I'd work out in the middle of the afternoon, and there was no real consistency. I was just trying to get my training in as I could. So I think that with this carb cycling program, it is the strictest just because of the timing issue, because it revolves around your training and what you're doing in that day. So typically your carb cycle looks like high carb on Monday, medium carb on Tuesday, low carb on Wednesday is your basic outline for someone who's just getting into carb cycling. And that is extremely hard to maintain psychologically, especially on your low carb days, or maybe you're on a carb cycle where you're trying to lose weight. So you have a high carb, medium carb, low carb, back-to-back days, and that can be really tough, especially whenever you're used to getting high amounts of carbohydrates on one day, and then 2 days later you're getting really, really low. So it's you're going in and out of this fluctuation, which can be really stressful as well. And if your training isn't consistent, then that type of diet isn't going to be as rewarding based on your goals. So I think people who are trying to lose weight and they're trying to do carb cycling with a cut is very, very tough and very challenging. They would probably get more benefit out of doing ketosis or intermittent fasting and trying to time their meals around their fasting window versus of their workout window, the window of gains.
Yeah, and carb cycling too. I mean, a lot of what they do with carb cycling, nutrient timing in general.
That's Coach Jen.
She worries me sometimes.
I think she fell.
Oh, probably. Well, it's new. A lot of the issues with carb cycling and nutrient timing is not the diet success rate itself. It's, again, like ketosis, it's a mentality issue are you in it to win it? Do you have that passion for what you're doing? When I had the most success with nutrient timing and carb cycling in general, I was working out 2-3 hours a day. And I had goals. My goal was weight loss, but my goal was also to be really strong and really, really good at Olympic weightlifting. So I was doing a lot of extra Olympic weightlifting 3-4 days a week on top of classes, on top of everything else. And I was staying strict to that diet. Carbs on my carb days, no carbs on my off days. Walking 45 minutes to an hour on the treadmill on my off days. And I saw a lot of results, a lot of aesthetic results, right? Because that diet is really based on aesthetics too. If you want aesthetics, carb cycling is a great way to get aesthetics. Does that mean you can't get it else in other ways? Absolutely not. You could get that anyway. Your body's going to kind of frame itself depending on how your body is built anyways. As you lose weight, if you're building muscle, your body is going to kind of carve itself out based on how your framework is built. For me, my shoulders were starting to get ripped. My back was starting to show a lot of muscle, which was awesome. I thought that was really cool. But then I became a business owner and didn't have 2-3 hours a day to work out. Didn't have the time to do all that prep work in terms of prepping my meals for an entire week on any given day. And just trying to track the numbers and all that was exhausting. And on top of 18-hour days, working 12 to 15 hours a day, the stress of everything that goes into owning a business, I couldn't do it, and I fell apart, right? And it took me a long time to kind of get my wits and get my legs out back under me again. And that came with just focusing on working out in general, right? Even if it's 10, 15 minutes, just doing something, being active. And intermittent fasting. And just, if I don't have time, I'll fast. If I don't have time to eat, I just won't until I have time. There's no tug, there's no timing issues. Now, on the other side, like you said, if you're training for an athletic endeavor, if you're training to bulk, if you're training to cut, and what I mean by cut is not I need to lose 40 pounds so I can get off this medicine, or because my doctor said I had to.
Trying to cut 2 or 3% off your body fat.
You're talking trying to cut body fat. You're not, when somebody normally talks about a cut, they're talking about aesthetic body fat cut. They are cutting and carving fat out to show the muscle. If that's your goal and aesthetics is your purpose, or performance is your purpose, then yeah, carb cycling, nutrient timing diet where you're eating where you're jacking your insulin back up after your workout with high sugar carbs. You're keeping your fat low around your workouts and eating more fat towards the end of the night if you're a morning workout person, or keeping your fat high in the morning if you're a nighttime workout person. Yes, absolutely perfect diet for you. Highly recommended. You just have to be strict. And make that your priority. If your priority is, say, a business with 20 employees that's open, 1,000,000 hours a day, 7 days a week, and your priorities are running a business, making sure your employees have food to put on the table, working out is part of it, but it's obviously not the main priority. Intermittent fasting, perfect, man, especially if you're busy. If you're a full-time student, you don't have time to eat between classes. There's a million different reasons to be doing intermittent fasting. If you're somebody that needs to lose a lot of weight and you're committed to it and it's a health thing, you're diabetic, you're borderline diabetic, you're on that border of type 2, there's health reasons, whatever it is, or you're just like, you're done and you've decided, I'm going keto because I think it can change my life and I'm committed to that multiple year process. Keto is fantastic. Now, there is that little bit of gray area where doing some sort of blend is good. Why? Because there's not really a one-size-fits-all diet for everyone. You can't really say that same diet's going to fit for him, that fits for me, that fits for her, that fits for the guy down the street. It's, for me, I kind of blend them all, right? So I have experience with all three. There are days where I'll just go straight keto. Why? Well, I didn't really do anything. I was probably pretty lazy. Or I was working in my office for 18 and 20 hours. And I know I don't really need any carbs in my body. I just don't. So I'll eat a bunch of fat, a bunch of protein, and veggies. And that's it. And then there's days where I might just be like, feel like spoiling myself. I got this craving. I'm going to let into it. And I'll go out and get a big fat sandwich, or I'll get cheeseburgers, or I'll get, a million, pizza, whatever it is. But again, I'm eating within my window, right? So it's kind of a carb cycling idea. It's kind of a ketosis style idea. I could probably tweak my diet just a little bit and go into ketosis and stay there if I stayed consistent. But again, my schedule, my lifestyle does not dictate consistency in that manner. It doesn't dictate. I just don't have I'm not prioritizing it that way right now. My goal is to lose weight, just to lose weight, to be healthier, to feel better, to just move better. Not necessarily for aesthetic reasons. That may change in the future. And then at that time, I might look at going back to something more of a carb cycling diet. If I'm like, man, y'all lost all this weight. Now I want to chisel and look buff and not wear a shirt for zero reason other than I just want to not wear a shirt, then I'll probably go back to a carb cycling diet. But just for the general reason of losing weight and being healthy, I think intermittent fasting is where it's at. And you can plug in both those other diets, research them. Mm-hmm. Test around with them, play with them, see what happens.
Yeah, I think the general consensus we're coming to here is it's all dependent not just on your biology, but your life and what it is you have time for. If you only have time for 30-minute workouts a day because you're just so strapped on time, maybe you come in for the express and that's all you got, carb cycling is not going to give you the most bang for your buck. If you're the type of person who doesn't have a whole lot of discipline, then maybe ketosis isn't going to be the best bang for your buck. For me, I cannot do ketosis, even though whenever it was just coming out and I was trying to be hip and do it because I was a trainer and I needed to experience it, couldn't do it. I love carbohydrates.
Carb cycling is not good for a lack of discipline either, because you're told exactly how many carbs you can eat, exactly how much protein, and exactly how much fat you can eat in every meal. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have the discipline to eat exactly that, you are not doing your body any favors, and your body goes out of balance, and you don't see nearly the results you could see if you just eat exactly what they tell you. So just a little preface there. Discipline, I don't care what your diet is. If you don't have discipline, you're probably not going to see any results. Mm-hmm. Intermittent fasting, keto, carb cycling. If you're not disciplined enough to stick within exactly what you need in terms of keto, or stick within your eating window for intermittent fasting, or stick to exactly the numbers that you are given, so that they can be changed and tweaked as time goes on, and you don't have the discipline to follow that, there's no diet in the world that's going to save you.
Mm-hmm. And I think that again, with the whole schedule thing, like a lot of people, it could not even be a schedule. It could be a geographical issue where you work somewhere where there are no healthy options or alternatives. You have to go to 7-Eleven.
You could live in Kentucky.
Hey, we hunt and fish for our own food, by God. I just actually moving to California. This is the most I've ever bought meat at a store.
Oh, yeah.
Since I moved here. It's disgusting. Go hunt, people. It's okay. Kill your own food. It's good for you. But anyway, he's right with the discipline. If you don't have the slightest amount of discipline, you're going to have a hard time. Or even the schedule or the lifestyle to be able to hold that type of discipline. But if I had to rate these on a level of difficulty, I would say that intermittent fasting is a great place to start and is the easiest. I would say that ketosis is probably second easiest because it allows flexibility around your schedule and requires a little bit of discipline. However, the hardest I would consider is carb cycling. Not only do you need the schedule, you also need the work capacity and the amount of energy output to replace those high carb days. And you also need a high amount of discipline to hit those numbers, not just in carbohydrates, but fat and protein as well. And you also need to make sure that you're able to eat when you're supposed to eat, meal timing or nutrient timing, which RP harps on pretty hardcore. So there's a whole lot more factors that come in with carb cycling, even though, yeah, you can eat all three macronutrients, carbohydrates, fat, and protein, but the requirements and the guidelines are so strict compared to ketosis or compared to just intermittent fasting. If I had to pick between the two, The 3, I would put 2 of them together and go with intermittent fasting, ketosis, based on my lifestyle, because it gives me time to eat when I want, to eat it when I can, and gives me minimal guidelines. So don't eat over this much. Okay. Whereas carb cycling is like, eat exactly this much, not 10 over, not 10 under, because that's the point where you're trying to get to that next level. Yep. And if you've got to that point where you really want to make that change, whether it's performance or if it's your looks, carb cycling is going to get you there. However, understand and know that it takes the biggest requirements, not only of discipline, but time and productivity as well. You got to dedicate it, and you got to be disciplined.
Yeah, and cheat days, they're more like a cheat meal.
Yeah.
And you will gain weight. And if you're a freak about the scale, carb cycle is probably not a good.
Don't look at the
Because
scale.
you're going to be, that is a slow rolling ball. You might see a pound here, a pound there, and you might see a bunch of maintaining or going up and back down to maintaining more often than you're going to see weight loss. And the same thing goes for weight gain. It is going to be a low, slow burn. So it is not a quick fix by any means, nor are any of them. But in terms of if you want to see that scale move, if you want to see that, I put in the work, give me the results. Intermittent fasting or a blend of intermittent fasting and ketosis is going to give you those results on a more structured basis, because there's a lot less variable there in terms of, did you eat at the right time? Did you eat the right amount of food? Is it the right amount? Are you eating too many carbs? Do we need to tweak that number? Mm-hmm. And that can go on for weeks before you get into homeostasis on a carb cycling diet. So don't think for 1 second that any of these are easy. Intermittent fasting being the easiest doesn't mean it is actually
still not easy. There's times where I'm getting ready to go to bed and it's like 8. I'm just like, man, I want a bowl of cereal so bad. But you got to tell yourself, no, can't have that bowl of cereal. Eat it in the morning when you wake up.
Saturday morning, I brought in donuts. They're like, eat one. And I'm like, nope, fasting.
Got to wait.
Yep,
That's tough. That's tough. Yep. That's why I think intermittent fasting, if you need discipline, that is the best place to start. Just start telling yourself when you can eat. In this window, that is the best place to not only understand and work on this, but develop and acquire some sort of baseline of discipline. And discipline is not something. It's not what is it? It's not a trait. It's something you got to earn. I used to not have a whole lot of discipline either until I joined the Army.
And then muscle, you got to build it up.
I started to become a personal trainer, and then I started to change my whole overall lifestyle. I used to smoke cigarettes. You know why I quit smoking cigarettes? Because I was going to be a personal trainer, and nobody's going to listen to a personal trainer that smokes cigarettes. So I made the decision that this is my life. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this change. So you got to tell yourself the same thing. Here's my life. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this change and stick with it and hold on to that discipline.
Prioritize, guys. Prioritize. Make it a priority, and keep that in the back of your mind. And we'll be back soon. Talk some more. And thanks for sticking with us. We're back here to kind of finish things off today. We talked a lot about the trendy, I guess you call it trendy diets going on right now. I don't think intermittent fasting is necessarily trendy as much as it's just becoming more of a thing because people are finding with their crazy schedules that it's a great way to stick to some sort of healthy lifestyle. Carb cycling, again, that's been out there forever. Bodybuilding, again, it's an aesthetic way to do it with the internet. Ketosis, however, has not been a extremely popular or well talked about diet for a long time. It's been used as an extreme diet in a lot of places. If you've ever gone to those places that they're like, here, drink these shakes, and you get to eat 6 pieces of broccoli a day,
keto water.
Yeah, and you'll lose 87 pounds in 6 months, but you'll have your skin hanging out over your pants, and all that. Yeah, that's pretty much keto diet. That's pretty much what they've been pushing on you forever. That's why they test your blood. That's why they do all those things. They offer you B12 shots. Legitimate ketosis for a performance-based athlete or someone in the lines that actually lifts weights and does things along those lines, much different. So,
ketosis does not always mean no carbs.
Right. It just means that your body's eating your fat to the point where if you're not lifting weights often enough, there's a good chance your body's going to eat muscle. So you're actually going to get weaker, even though you're losing weight, you're actually losing muscle mass as well and getting weaker. So ketosis really means that if you're in that nice pocket, your body's eating fat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and lifting weights keeps your body from eating muscle tissue and getting weaker. So, even if you're doing ketosis, just a reminder, make sure you're lifting a little bit of weights out there, kids. Don't forget to, hit those dumbbells, hit a barbell, do a little bit of weight lifting. Even if it's minor, you just need to do enough of it that your body doesn't start eating muscle.
Resistance is good.
Yeah,
good for the soul.
Is good. Packing on some muscles, okay. That way you don't end up with that really flabby skinny that a lot of people can
skinny
have.
Fat. I used to call my wife skinny fat all the time.
There's skinny fat. I'm talking like legitimate people where they have excess skin, and because they didn't pack in any muscle on their frame, they literally have skin hanging off. And you can really minimize that by lifting weights and making sure you're putting on some muscle to fill in those gaps as best as possible. So, don't forget
Give
to do
that boy some milk.
With that, I think we want to just go ahead and say thank you to all our veterans out there. I know Veterans Day is going to be coming up. I think it's going to be the day after we release this episode. So thank you to all the veterans out there. We'll probably do one more episode after this for Thanksgiving. And then we'll be taking a hiatus for a couple weeks for the holidays. So, let's just say thank you to the veterans.
Vacation.
Hope everybody out there has a great holiday. And we will talk to you guys one more time. We got one more of these coming, and then we're going to be filming a bunch of these for a couple, maybe one or two in December, but for the most part, we're going to be filming for January on. So hope you guys are ready. We got a bunch of great people we're talking to be guests on the show. So we're going to be definitely stepping it up a notch in 2018
way cooler than us.
For you. So again, thank you, veterans. We appreciate you. And we will talk to you guys later.
See you guys. Thanks for listening or watching.